Ciao everyone, ciao from Pietro from the limited edition, the independent retailer of independent watchmakers. This is what we do, and we're very proud to be the ones that often bring over the secrets, the gems from the world of independent watchmaking. Today is no exception, as we will have an interesting live with one of our newly discovered watchmakers that has been such a fundamental part of the last 12 months of our operations, as we have launched recently our limited edition with James Lamb. So we'll be in touch now, connected with our editor, Johnny McElleron, and with the partners that helped us to launch this limited edition and to give the world this gift under the name of James Lamb. So we have Asher from Collective Horology, our favorite collector group. Asher, am I allowed to say that? I would definitely say that.
I'll take that. Nice to see you guys.
And Johnny, obviously, the editor of the Watch Press and my partner in crime in this broadcast called The Independent. And our guest today is James Lamb from Lincolnshire, from the UK. I think, James, probably the first time we see your face publicly.
It is, yes. I try to hide it for obvious sales reasons. You know, you can't sort of put people off or anything. So, you know, this is it. This is the first time, probably.
Well, welcome, James. It's great to have you aboard, and Asher, fantastic to welcome you both aboard on the Independence. And it's, as Pietro has been saying, as the limited edition is probably one of the foremost platforms in the UK, Europe, where Collective Horology is doing a similar job in the United States, and so we've pretty much got the northern hemisphere covered here, guys. And but it's
got it covered. We got it covered, and the first interesting thing you already pointed out, Johnny. Why the heck, Pietro and Asher are together in such a project that is, something that we would do individually normally, but on this one, our paths have crossed big time, Asher, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. I have massive admiration for you, Pietro, and for the limited edition in general, largely because so much of what you do is about looking for tremendous artisans and watchmakers that the world needs to know about. And I think we both came to James through different paths, but around similar times. You know, myself, James, I made your acquaintance through our mutual friend Josh Shapiro. And I believe, Pietro, you came across James through another mutual friend, but both of us had that same aha moment when we saw his work of how remarkable it is, how distinct it is in the world of independent watchmaking. And, my general belief is everything is better when it's done with friends. So I'm happy to say that we were able to create something here, or I should not take any credit on that one, that James was able to create something that we were able to bring to market that is distinct, unusual, and truly something special.
Absolutely, and we'll get soon into the details, and we'll let also obviously James explain as the long process that brought to this little piece of gear that we absolutely love. Johnny, can you help us to put James in perspective of what's happening in the UK, what's happening worldwide with the world of independent watchmaking, and where, in your opinion, James's work stand as you see it and as you've discovered it as well, I guess, over the last 2 years?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that first of all, Britain had was the global epicenter for haute horlogerie, watchmaking in general in the 1700s, 1800s, and it was where there were some of the great names in watchmaking were based in the UK, in London. You had Mudge, you had Arnold, you had Tompion and Graham and Harrison, all who are incredible innovators. And but over the last century, the watchmaking industry in the UK has definitely experienced a decline. And so it is only now in the last 10, 15 years, post George Daniels, I will say, who was for a long time the vanguard of handcrafted traditional watchmaking in the UK, and he held that mantle for years. And but it's only really in the last 10 or 15 years that there's been a resurgence of young watchmakers who are coming to light now. And obviously Roger W. Smith as well, who is based in the Isle of Man, who is also was one of George Daniels' he was his principal understudy. And so what James is doing is part of this revolution, or this renaissance, if you like, of independent watchmaking, which is going on in UK. And his watches are essentially made by hand, and virtually every component. At this time, we're still using, working with robust, super reliable Celita Swiss-made movement, but pretty much every other element of the watch is manufactured by hand.
I may not know. I was about to say I may not know James as well as others, but I'm pretty confident that having three people talking about him while he's on camera has got to be one of his worst nightmares. So,
I'm literally sat and holding my breath, like.
Yeah. So I'll hand it over to Pietro, but I want the empathy to flow from the world as we describe James's work in front of him.
Absolutely. And James, thank you for your time today, and thank you for the fun you've been giving us over the last 13 months, because this launch has been one of the most educational, if you like. We've been through different creations, Asher and myself, and Johnny with me, of course. And the approach that we had on the details, on the finest details from day one, and the blank page we had to freely create something that sounded absolutely bonkers. I don't know if bonkers is a term that we can use also in the US, but absolutely crazy, let's put it like that. It works. Was an absolute inspiration. How good was it for you, James, and how happy you are with the James Lamb Origin Azur that we have launched last week?
Yeah, I was telling somebody just earlier on Instagram that Azur has turned out pretty good compared to, say, the original proposal sketches that we had back in, what was it, January or February last year. Obviously, I gave you guys like a bunch of different ideas, and there was like sort of this nudge towards a particular one, and then we sort of came back to it a week or so later on, and then we sort of think, okay, let's have another look at this, and the same one kept coming up, like, yeah, we still like this one, which was good. But there was an element of in the back of my mind where I was thinking, that's great, I like it, look at it, but no idea how to make it. But let's go for it anyway. We'll figure it out. The details, it'll be fine. And so I just sort of knew the sort of thing I wanted it to look like, and have this reflection of water from the underside, and when you move the piece, it's sort of to kind of glitter a little bit, shimmer in some sense, and get some dynamic sort of light play, the kind of thing that lots of dials go for anyway. But in a geometric sense, I thought it would be fun to try. Now, there's a few different approaches I could have tried, but I think with the 3D laser, it's been a really good way of doing this. It's certainly a pretty sort of high-tech way of producing a dial, but it's sort of a departure from the very traditional sort of side of things. But I'm pretty pleased with the overall effect of the dial, certainly.
Just taking a look at it
from the front angle there. I mean, if we had sort of any live shots of the thing moving around, but it's certainly the blue of the enamel is really good. That's perfect to the kind of thing we're after. It's not too dark or too light, so when it doesn't look washed out when it isn't a light, sort of a bright raking light. There you go, that's good. So that you can see there up towards the top of the dial, we've got some darker shades, and how that sort of transfers over to the to that lower side. It doesn't look too wishy-washy at the bottom there, whereas we do get some depth in the shadow sections. So no, it's great as far as I'm concerned. I'm very pleased with how it's turned.
Do you remember, Asher, when we it came to the point of discussing a 3D dial with James, that we actually asked him, really, for real, you can actually work on a 3D dial? How is the enamel gonna stick on steep surfaces and and details like that? This is besides obviously the handmade case, which is obviously a massive highlight of James's work.
Yeah, one of the bigger lessons for me in this project, and frankly over the next few years for me, just with pieces that we're doing with Collective, because there's another watch that we're also experimenting with enamel on, has been a very large lesson in the dynamism of enamel. Because in my mind, and I think not to speak for other collectors, but I will, I think that sometimes we have this appearance of enamel being, a relatively dainty and uniform feel. We've seen enamel traditionally in rich black enamel on vintage Pateks, for example, and it's got this sort of stodgy feel to it. What Azur has done, and I think does for a lot of people, myself included, is when you handle it, you really see the dynamism that material can have, especially when leveraged against a non-flat dial blank. In this instance, the three-dimensionality is not faked. The three-dimensionality is, in fact, as James pointed out, engraved using that 3D laser technology, and the enamel itself creates a very distinct appearance as light travels through it. I mean, you'll see this right now as Pietro moves it around. There you go. It's almost as if the dial itself comes alive, and it's really changed my perception and my feeling on the material itself. What I've seen too, as people have gotten this out into the wild, is just an extraordinary pleasure and joy that they get from walking down the street and lifting up their arm and seeing the watch in literally and figuratively different light. It's part of what I think a piece like this can do. The watch is going to be always different, just by a little bit, depending on how you look at it, and there's a magic to that.
Yeah. I just think to point out too also that virtually everything that we're looking at here is made by hand, James. So from the dial, the ceramic dial, hours and minutes display, the watch itself is made out of Argentium 395 silver alloy.
935,
and all manufactured by hand in-house. So very few watchmakers make their own cases. So it's one of those components that are very often outsourced because of the complexity and the challenges of manufacturing. But it is also, it's, as I said, choosing to work with material like Argentium 395, which is not the easiest to work with, has presented its own challenges. But it's, as Pietro has it on the wrist there, it is just absolutely, it's a beautiful piece. Yep.
Yeah, no, it looks good. He ought to have one. It suits him.
He knows someone who can sell it to him.
Yeah. So James, your philosophy of handmade, is there a way to explain where it comes from and how it fulfills your creative drive?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I was sort of set on various routes some years ago. So all this isn't by accident, by the way. This has been planned out ridiculously for a long, long time. But some things I've found over the years is that, although you think you're ready for a particular stage or a particular phase, you're actually probably not. And it's a good job that things have worked out the way they have. I think if I'd started making watches maybe 12 years ago or 8 years ago, I don't think the collectors were there to be able to be, or the method of being able to communicate to collectors there. Because I think we were relying even back then on predominantly print rather than social media to be able to contact and speak to people. I mean, when I make a watch, I can sort of send messages and videos and just go through the entire process. So that's really valuable. But as for the actual method of making these things, I've chose this way because it's something that, okay, I can make tools and jigs, I can precisely machine things, I can design, I can problem solve. I am a qualified watchmaker, and there are holes in your skill set, and you think, okay, what can't I do? What don't I know how to do? One of them is making cases. And so several years ago, probably, I'm trying to think, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started playing around with silver. I was using sterling silver at the time, and I started making silly things like bits of jewellery and small boxes. But this was all as part of like the early efforts to sort of start to think about how to understand tools and material and soldering. And yeah, soldering is horrible. I've mentioned this before fairly recently, that soldering can be certainly a skill one has to practice regularly. Oh, there we go. You see on the shots here, they've got the basic ring forms that I create from strip silver. I sort of hammer those things around a mandrel and then cut them and then file those faces square, so that when you bring them up close together, you use binding wire to bring them together, and then you flux and solder them. And there we go. There's a fairly average example of some soldering there. Don't look at the one at the back too close. But yeah, no, that's the sort of idea of how the basic form is made. And then after that, you'd sort of skim up the case and start profiling and creating those internal parts that's, for like the glass seating and the dial and for how the case back goes together, etc. So by the time, it's spun in the lathe, you lose all those black, crunchy, crusty bits. Oh yeah, that's a good example of black, crunchy, crusty bits. So yeah, that's just everything. The looks all soldered on there. I'm just looking closely at the screen there, checking my own solder. Yeah, it's not bad. It's okay. It's okay. It's passable. Yeah, okay. These are sort of semi-finished lugs. So they've been produced from just a sheet of silver, and I've cut them out and have created like a little bit of machining on them. And I don't think I've actually put I can't see any holes there, so I've not done that. I've not drilled the holes yet on those. And that was, I can't remember how many I made. I think I made probably, so if it's 4, 12, 48 and a handful of spares. So I think I made 50 or 60 lugs like that. Each one has to be a left and a right side, of course. So you can't, you have to remember to not go in the zone and start drilling holes randomly, all the same, because otherwise you end up with 60 right-hand side lugs, which doesn't, you don't need that many. So it's, It is a long process.
Although when you are finishing, you have a good ability to reshape things in the way you want, not doing everything by hand, but that would be incredibly time consuming, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried pretty much every method of making cases. What you see now is just the final iteration of probably a dozen different often buying the lengths of material. Okay, this is silver, but when I first started off, back in early 2020, I was making them out of copper, because copper and silver are kind of quite similar when you're making things. So, it will solder the same. It machines similar-ish. And you can perform similar functions with copper and again, brass later on that you can do with silver. It's just that copper's a good bit cheaper. So that's how we started with this. But I've got, I meant to bring it over actually. There's a box full of bits and pieces that are horrible fails from the first attempt. So yeah, that's always good to sort of go back to and find out what I was thinking at the time with regard to like whether a method of like fixing the lugs, for example, which was a really big problem for months and months, trying to find a way to fix lugs onto the case that didn't cause problems later on. So there's, you have like an idea or an aesthetic of something, you can sketch something up, but actually making that thing from the sketch, you'll find that so many different variations happen during the manufacturing process. This is why sometimes when young watchmakers start designing watches, they over-design watches because they've not started cutting metal yet. And it's only when you're designing and after you've designed and you're actually making something that you start, you can have little happy accidents and you think, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, I quite like that, actually. I'm going to make that into a feature. And doing that can open up more doors than sat in front of like a CAD drawing or something, just honing something to the nth degree, which, it might be a sterile model of something. And it might be very pretty, but, if you can't make it, then there's no point. So I thought, right, paper, pen, that's it. calculator, and I must have got through maybe 2 reams of paper doing this thing. It was literally, my bin was overflowing, and all of them just looked like just sheets of paper with circles on, and like calculations, and just stacks of metal on the ground, and just a frustrated Mr. Lamb. This happened for probably best part of a year or so. And eventually you make just enough mistakes that maybe you get a few successes, and you start going from those successes. But I can see why most companies buy cases, put it that way.
You actually bring up a very interesting point. Sorry, Azur. James, you actually bring up a very interesting point there, that you've got reams of paper and sketches and hand-drawn interpretations of what would be the finished result. That's unusual too, because you don't use CNC in your creating the basically the blueprint for your watch. So all the tolerances, which are microscopic, have to be figured out and planned on pen and paper or pencil and paper before you go into the process of starting to shape, form, create the actual watch case or any of the components. So why have you chosen to go the traditional route?
This is a good question, because when I worked in industry making things, it was a prototyping department. So we'd have basic machines, rather like that him there,
Yes.
and like a mill and stuff. There was no CNC work there at all, because the amount of time it took to maybe program a CNC, set it up, mess around. You could have just made the thing on like a manual machine. So, you just sort of sketch out what you want, sort of what they call like a fag packet sketch. And you'd sort of draw out, okay, fine, what's the problem? What do I need? Just draw it out. Think, okay, these are my working tolerances. Get on the machine, cut metal. And then, within 20 minutes, you can provide a solution for somebody that if you'd use the CNC machine, it would maybe taken a day and a half. So, it's very, very quick prototyping. And it's that method of thinking 3D in your head. Okay, what's going where? What clearances do I require here? And I'm sort of fairly lucky in being able to think 3D quite easily. So, and it's very valuable for problem solving, especially when you're making things. If you know what you can make, you know what the machine's are able to make. You know that you can make tools to then make something else. You can problem solve in a variety of different ways, and it's all those skills that you can bring together to then think, okay, right, well, I can make a case, but I need to make a few different setups and jigs and tooling to be able to make that case. And it's knowing how to do that, and it's that you can only get from, say, years of making things and working out problems and having horrible mistakes and etc. So
well, it's brave to do that. I think Azur, I cut across you there, so if you want to come back with your question there.
Oh, sure. No, it's more of just an observation, and I'm actually glad you did, because what James just said is a good example of it. I'm thinking, one of the things that attracted me as a collector to James, and I would argue, I would suggest to anyone who is thinking about James from a collecting perspective, is just a readjustment of what watchmaking might mean in your own mind. For me, so much of the way that I perceive and think about watchmaking is tied to movement design, which is, of course, a critical component to creating a distinct and unique watch. But to be completely candid, I never really thought about case making in that context. And, working with James over the last year and change, 2 years really, if we think about when I placed my order for my own Origin series, was a readjustment, because cases, and the way James has described it, often came from this mystical land of case makers, and were a component, certainly from an aesthetic standpoint, to the watch. But I never thought of them as a element of the journey of becoming a complete and total watchmaker. And when you look at the steps that James has taken to develop this particular case, and how this case has been refined over the 20, 30 pieces that he's made, from prototype all the way through to Azur today, you really see an evolution of design and of skill that, for me as a collector, has been really interesting to step into, because different things attract us to different watches. And James, I'm curious for your perspective of this. You talk about case making being a critical element to you and your journey as a watchmaker. I'm curious what, as you consider mastering this in if one can ever say that they master a skill, as you consider nailing this, and then what do you view as the next step for you in your journey as a watchmaker? I mean, how does Origin sit in your long-term play? Because you said this is a thing you've been thinking about for many, many, many years. So I suspect your master plan must have steps beyond this too.
It really does. Currently, I would say, from a skill perspective for case making, I'd say I'm maybe 15% the way there. There's an awful lot to learn. There's a heap I want to learn how to do, various refinements and developments, things that would perhaps demonstrate more skill and more, I don't know, sort of, like I say, more refinements than what I can do right now with this particular alloy and this particular method of making. And so I'll just keep working on that. Sorry, someone says I've got a cool workshop. So yeah, there's various things. I know what I'm going to be doing next. I'm being really cagey, aren't I? I'm sort of just not telling you exactly what I'm going to be doing. But yes,
well, it's less of trying to set you up to tell me what the next product is. It's more of just I think me thinking about you as an artist, on your longer term journey, because so much of what we tend to see, on the outside are these episodic moments. This is my next release. This is the evolution of X, Y, and Z. But what we don't tend to hear from watchmakers is, their own internal journey as they think through how do I move from being, from case making to dial making to movement manufacture, hell, maybe even to strap making, and all of the things that ultimately come together to create a holistic product.
There is an element as well. It's Asher, I have in regards to that, I have a question for you. Was it this incredible artisanal journey we've been through with James? And of course, I'm not going to take any credit apart from the fact of having had the privilege of sharing the process. A bit of a response to the overflowing, of the digital, the NFT culture, the everything soon, everything now kind of philosophy that is ruling the world, which has a lot to do with the reason why we actually collect and love watches, mechanical things, by definition. I found a lot of that. In this project, and it's been particularly fulfilling and pleasant, I have to say. Was it the same for you?
Well, yeah. For sure. I mean, first of all, James has my same hairstyle, so we're already locked in simpatico.
We could be,
but no, I mean, look, I think all of us start in one place or another, right? Like so many people, my attraction to watches began in the mainstream. My first watch was the Seamaster. That's really a nice watch was the Seamaster. That's where my head began. But I've always been attracted to handcraft and to fine art, and probably because I'm miserable at it myself. So for me, what I think is so beautiful about this is if you really believe, and I think, James, we said this on Scottish Watches, and I really truly believe it in my heart. Like if you want to see innovation in the watch world, if you want to see Thanks, Brian. If you want to see innovation in the watch world, if you want to see creativity, then it's makers like James that we really need to support, because ultimately they're the ones who are taking the risk to try new methods and to bring new product into the world that we haven't seen before, using only their hands and their imagination. And there's a beauty and a magic to that cannot be replicated in any other way. And I mean, that's arguably what makes independent watches special, but that's really what makes handmade products so unique. They will never be 100% perfect, and I don't mean that as a dig. In fact, I mean that as a point of pride, that you're actually holding something that is literally an example of an artisan's output, not what was spat out the back end of a CNC machine. And no shame there. I've got plenty of machine-made watches that I love, but they don't have the same soul that my Origin series does. And I think that's a recalibration that some of us as collectors may need to make when we think about what it means to hold something that's handmade versus what it means to buy something that is mass-produced. Rolex is a highly reliable, extraordinary watch, but it's not a soulful watch. That's a major distinction.
Yeah.
And before anyone comments on that, I would like to give a shout to those that are following this live. Thank you very much. It's great to see you with the independents today. Feel free to drop your own questions to James, to Asher, to Johnny, to myself. We still have 5 to 10 minutes of this live, and we haven't even talked about the dials. So we have, but not enough. I would say. So I was going to launch a question to James, how the process to create these incredible dials, and I'm showing here in the camera the amazing chamfered enamel dial that is on the original Origin series, the water that I have chosen, being a lover of all shades of blues. James, how did the idea of developing, the main elements, the body of the dial came as, in-house, you making that part, and then you're collaborating with certain artists that are specialized in different finishing and decorations. How did it all come about?
That's a nice question, Pietro, but unfortunately James has disappeared off our radar here at the time for the time being. So hopefully he'll come back and be. I don't know what.
So shall I recap a little bit on the James Lamb Azur, which is a collaborative project between a collective group based in California called Collective Horology. If you're not familiar with them, Asher is here representing them, Asher being a collector himself. So the James Lamb Azur is the latest iteration of the Origin series. We have decided to launch a limited series of 12 pieces, giving enough volume for everybody, hopefully, to be safe from the hype game that sometimes creates those scary situations where you have to make a split decision on whether to buy a timepiece or not in the middle of the night, juggling across your 3-4 credit cards. And we came to hate that kind of practice. So 12 pieces, when you consider that James has made so far probably 15 watches altogether since he started. 12 pieces seem like a big volume as far as we are concerned, at least enough for everybody to have a good educated reflection about possibly acquiring this timepiece. It's a 39 millimeters Argentium case, and it's actually 9.75 millimeter thick. With a lug-to-lug size of 48 millimeters. So it's very, very wearable. Yes, James Lamb produces the cases in-house. This means that James Lamb potentially could produce a case fitting your wrist perfectly. But of course, we had to make a decision, Asher, on this one, and we went for the straight 39 millimeters case. There is an 80 millimeters strap with the strap also. It fits, it was supposed to be as understated as possible to give this incredible dial the relevance that it deserves. And we mentioned about the case being completely handmade, 935 Argentium case, hallmarked by the assay office in London. James, as you went quickly to get your cup of tea, I made a question, and I said, how did the process and the idea of working with different artists, which is a practice that I love in contemporary art as much as I love in watchmaking, came about for the dials? So we know that you make a number of components in-house, the case, but let's not forget, the decorated movement holder, the silver dial blanks, the lugs, as you said, the pendant tube, the winding crown, the silver dial feet, and the ceramic sub-dial. So a big part of the dial is your own work. And shall I say the decoration, the dynamics in the colors are the fruit of actually a collaboration or some collaborations that you've put together?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, I use a chap called Andy Roberts for the enameling. He's a guy that's got 40 years experience. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Okay, just checking. A bit of a technical problem a minute ago. The enameler, he's got 40 years experience, second generation. I'd approached him, a couple of years ago. I'd seen his work online, and he was doing a lot of restoration work, and it was like old sort of Fabergé stuff. And I was like, God, this is really nice. And it was going to be fitting with the kind of thing I wanted to do theme-wise. I'd already started thinking of a theme for Origin, and I abandoned it. I won't tell you what it was. It doesn't matter now. But and then I sort of went on to my second choice, which was elements. And I thought, right, I need the colours and the textures to be a particular way. The design process I was originally going through with drawings was sometimes a little bit too obvious, and I was thinking to myself, right, I don't really want to do something pictorial. It's got to be abstract, and so I could offer this as like an idea, which is fine. You know, you can create something abstract, but it's like, well, can this thing actually be made? So I thought, well, you know, do you approach hand engravers, or do you speak to somebody who can maybe offer you something a little bit different for the dials? And so I originally did speak to a hand engraver, but then it quickly became apparent that the price point that I was wanting to put Origin in, it wasn't going to be possible with hand engraving totally. So it was for output as well. Everything was going to take twice as long to do. So I was like, okay, so let's have a look at the laser engraving and what can we do with lasers these days. And quickly found someone that could use the 3D method of engraving the surface. So, for example, with earth element and fire, what you get with that is something quite unique in that you've got multiple layers and real depth to the dial, which when you enamel over the top of that gives you a real fantastic depth. It looks really weird actually in real life. One of them, earth, looks ever so odd. I've not been able to photograph it well at all. I don't think you've got any images of Earth down there, but no, it's and fire is also a very good one. But there was no other way I was going to be able to sort of create dials unless I involved other people, because I wasn't going to start messing around with enameling kilns and things like that. It was just going to end up to be a melted, bubbly mess. That, you know, there's no point. I wanted to involve other people that knew how to do things. And so part of that was, okay, fine, you got the high-tech laser part, but then also, you know, you want to have some really super quality enamel work as well. And so, Andy Roberts was the guy for that. And,
can I just interrupt there for one moment? Because I know, Asher, you have a very pressing engagement that...
Well, it is early morning here, and I sadly have two small children that you can't see, but are peering through my window at me currently. Which means that I may have to take my leave. But before I do, I just want to say one thing which we haven't said on this. Well, two things. The first is, James, first of all, thank you for making something so absolutely, truly magical. So from my heart, truly. And the second thing, I know we haven't touched on it, but we should. If you've been wondering, these watches costs $8,900 US, 7,300 GBP, both before taxes locally. So if you've been watching this and wondering, how many tens of thousands of dollars or pounds you need to invest, I'm happy to say that it is a fractional component of that right now. And hype aside and the rest of it, what I also love about this is that you are literally putting your money into the pocket of a maker, and that maker can then take that to make more watches. And that is something that is incredibly important. You're not paying for marketing. You're not paying for distribution. You're paying for the watch. And that is a really beautiful thing that also doesn't tend to happen in the watch world. So I point that out as a parting thought as I go to my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old. But
those are the priorities, Asher, for sure. There's been a couple of comments that. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for the comments that they have given us. It gives us a great buzz to know that you're engaging, that you're that what we're doing is connecting with you. And so, CB, congratulations, James and Asher, on a wonderful collaboration. You hit the nail on the head with the soul of the watch. Most true collectors appreciate and prefer a soul versus machine perfection, and I know what we're all talking about that there. But Asher, listen, thank you so much indeed, and
my pleasure. Yeah, see you gentlemen soon.
Sure.
Thank you, Asher. See you soon.
Cheers, Asher.
Ciao.
Cheers, mate.
Okay. So that's so that was great to have Asher on board live from the United States. So great story altogether.
You have to continue to take over from where Asher left it. Yes, We've been lucky with some good responses on this launch, and more than half of the pieces have been now sold. But there is still the possibility, if you are in the US, to go on the Collective Horology website, or if you are in Europe, on the limited edition, which is something I can show you here. The limited edition website, where you find all the information about the piece, all the details, all the shots, and as well as a detailed review that has been put together by Johnny. And Johnny, thank you for that. Johnny of the Watch Press. So you can also access to the full article on the Watch Press itself. And the hidden gem, the secret, is not a secret anymore. James, when you look at the coverage that we've been lucky to generate over the last week. So curious to see how things may change for you now, but it has been an absolute privilege to be part of this small adventure that we hope and we believe is the first of many for you to come and to be involved with as you develop as a watchmaker.
There's one last question
for the opportunity.
Congratulations on your beautiful watch. I know you can't tell us too much about it, but what is the next step for you? Are you progressing? Is it a more hands-on creation, or how do you see the evolution?
I'm still very much. Sorry, Johnny. I'm still very much on this process of development with the case making. So if we're going to call this Origin the first step, and then so from there the second series will feature some enhancements and greater features and refinements that I've not done on Origin, and that will become more apparent if you think about maybe things that are a bit similar to sort of pocket watch and how pocket watch cases were made. I'll be sort of following that path a little bit more, and that's probably all I'll say there. But it's certainly going to be new challenges, which I'm looking forward to. I like to, I seem to not want to have things easy.
Excellent. You choosing to do freestyle watchmaking without CNC or CAD or useful high-tech tools they got is certainly...
there's no future in it, honestly. Electricity. It's
you don't think it'll catch on, though.
No.
I can easily imagine James not being very excited by NFT or the new technologies coming up.
I don't even know what you're saying, honestly. I don't. Just letters and numbers now. TLAs,
Gentlemen, this was an absolute treat. James, thank you for your time. Thank you to the audience for watching this. This was episode number 2 of the Independence, this little humble format that we've put together between the limited edition and the Watch Press. Our obviously competent and knowledgeable editor, Johnny, is a big part of it. And thanks, Johnny, for your time as well. If you want to know more about James Lamb, besides the obvious website that is out there, do you want to mention the exact address, James, just in case?
Just type into Google James Lamb Watches .com. That should find something. You'll find it.
Perfect. Otherwise, we've been lucky enough to be on Scottish Watches this week. There is a fabulous episode with Scottish Watches that you may want to go and listen to. Fantastic article on the Watch Press, on monochrome, on many other Worn and Wound I want to mention as well. Many other watch blogs, and with Independence, we will keep bringing you the underground watchmakers, as I like to define it, with our common passion for rock music as well. James, underground is a privilege. It's not a diminishing term at all. This episode will be online very soon. And once again, thank you everyone for being with us. James, we'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
James, thank you very much indeed. And congratulations on the beautiful piece. For everybody who's been following us today, thank you very much for tuning in. And you can always catch up on YouTube and to follow the adventures of Pietro, Tomajer, and Johnny as we go through the world of independent watchmaking. Thank you very much from me and from Pietro. I'll end it now.
See you very soon. All the best.